been saying there that the world has changed an awful lot in the last few years, and TV has changed an awful lot, and like we were saying, there's a lot more different ways to make TV, put it out there to reach people. So we've touched today upon what opportunities there are and how there are opportunities for different people who want to do things in different ways. But what are the challenges then of this changed world and this changing world for you guys in what you do?
Okay, I'll start. My take, I think I take your point. I think there is still some good television there, but it's in the stuff we've always been good at. I think the sectors I'm interested in, drama and comedy, are the two sectors that I think are particularly weak at the moment and have been going downhill for the last probably 7 or 8, 9 years. And that goes back to your point about people being scared, not taking any risks, the same boring people coming backwards and forwards, and the same sort of, once they get a format, they'll just do it to death.
Just put Stephen Fry on everything, that's how...
No, well, that's it, put Stephen Fry or Dawn French or everything or whatever, but it's the same people, so there hasn't been new talent. But I think there's not been any new talent because I think it's been the death of regional television. So everything's very London-centric now, and so London-centric has meant that the pool is very small. So, Peter Kay wouldn't have got a start now had it not been for Granada Television. And you can the Royal Family was the same. So they're all regional people that have come from the region. So once ITV became a conglomerate of one, it meant the doors to access were shut. So unless you had a good agent downtown or you were playing on the circuit down in London, you ain't going to get anywhere. And that's the sad thing. So you hope the BBC going back to Salford might just open it up again. But nothing comes from Newcastle now. They don't make anything. All the crews that go and do Tracy Beaker are all London-based, going up north. And so that's just sad. That's just sad. I mean, I know director Craig Lyons who lives in Newcastle but has to come to London to work, right, and then can't go back up there.
It's the opposite of what we're being told about the globalised world, that you can make stuff anywhere and anyone can make it anywhere and put it out anywhere.
Well, you usually have a London producer that comes up north and will bring the crew with them because it's that shorthand again. You've worked with these people, and so you take them with you. So then the programme costs a lot more money, and the locals don't get a look in. Or, which has now happened, I met an editor on the train, and he lives near me, and he was going to, that's right, he was on his way from Scotland because he'd been working on some drama up there, and there's no editors in Scotland because once Scottish TV moved, there were no editors. So he's now got to go to Scotland. He has to pay his own accommodation, his own train fare, and he's treated like a local. And he was on his way back to go to Casualty in Cardiff. I think Casualty's in Cardiff now, and doing exactly the same. He said none of this makes any sense. So we're not training the people in the regions because they've all moved out of the regions when it all became London-centric. And so we're now being shipped back to the regions, and we're having to pay our own way there. So for craft people, it's a misery. They're not getting any money.
Do you think it's going to be the impact of that for the industry, or do you think it's,
I don't know. I mean, models work. I started from Granada. Granada was fantastic because it lived in its region. It was part of the region. Stuff came out of the region. Tony Wilson made Manchester, going back to music, the biggest place in Britain, with factory records. It was the biggest. I think there were more people wanted to go to Manchester than any other university for a long time. But that, because its regionality, it was sold on the back of Granada doing these things. And Granada, gave ordinary people a go. You could get to Granada. There were little shows, there were little things, that now, once that's gone, I mean, they've now sold the studios, haven't they? It's going to be IKEA. So that's gone, right? And you just think, that's really sad, really. So you've got conglomerates working, and when it was 12 companies, each one divvied up in a sense, and so the ones in Norfolk became naturalists, and everywhere had a little specialisation.
Do you think that, because I think it's interesting, what you're saying, I completely agree with you, and especially with BBC Birmingham closing down, although interesting that drama has just come back in there this week. It hasn't. But what I find interesting is that a lot of independent production companies are going more regional.
Yeah.
It's a very slow trickle. There's nothing to do, but we've seen in Birmingham the BBC amalgamating with Bristol, and I do see what you mean. I mean, Countryfile is the most watched factual programme in the UK. It's not made in London. It was always made in Birmingham. They've just moved them to Bristol, rightly or wrongly. Top Gear started in Birmingham. That's the second most watched factual programme. But Endemol, who's a massive independent who you probably know of, started Big Brother in this country, and Maverick, who's another big independent, they have both grown in Birmingham. They've both put more resource into Birmingham. There's companies starting in Glasgow because there's a lot of money in the BBC and in ITV and in Channel 4 that needs to go to the regions. It's part of their remit. Right. And so these independents are starting up, and actually they're putting the money into the regions, and then we're trying to bring in people from those regions. And I agree with you that the training hasn't been there, but I really hope that perhaps that will trickle back, because I think without regional impact, then you do get this kind of like, I don't know how to say it without being horrible to London, but you know, you do get this sort of like, you just get one view of things, and it's a very London-centric view. I was sitting in a meeting in London a couple of years ago, and then they said, oh, let's get a really iconic shot. We want a really iconic shot for the pre-titles. What's the most iconic thing? And somebody said, what about that bridge going over to St Paul's, the Bendy Bridge? And I was sitting there going, nobody in Lancashire gives two fucks about that Bendy Bridge going over to St Paul's, to be perfectly honest with you. Right, yeah. So that's like, you know, you're talking about 8 million people who might quite like that Bendy Bridge, half of which probably don't. And the rest of the country really don't care. And that's why I think regional TV can be so successful, because we actually are tuned in to what the majority of the country do, which is we go home, we get a takeaway, and we sit and watch some telly, and then we go to bed generally. That's about as exciting as my life gets anyway. Or we go to the pub, you know, whereas we're not going to Soho House on a Friday night. And in fact, when I work in London, I try very hard to sort of not do that because it's just not my scene. And it's not for ordinary people who want to come and watch television. I think it's really important that people, I don't know, that people sort of stay grounded and know their audience, know their viewers.
So, I mean, like, particularly for you, where's the role of the independent in this?
Well, I think one of the problems with, for example, this idea of growing regional talent. I mean, we've had money through Channel 4 through their Alpha Fund, which is supposed to support kind of regional production companies and creative diversity. But I think a lot of the big production companies who set up in the regions, really, it's just a front to funnel the money back. To London. Yeah, I think that's
brass plating, isn't it?
It is, yeah. I think that's really, and you don't.
Baby Cow did it, and they all had offices, but nothing happened.
Exactly, and you have even now with the Media City and the BBC moving up, you see it with the kind of the real decision makers are not there. I mean, Peter Salmon exemplifies it, who's running the project. He's not really. He's only got one foot in the whole project, because there's a sense that really decisions are not made there, and I think that's the key with television, and I suppose anything that's creative, is where's the idea coming from, or who owns it originally? Where's it? You know, where's the real? And not just that people are being paid to work. And the interesting thing with Granada, you still see a lot of people in the Manchester production world. They all worked on World in Action. You know, World in Action was because it was probably the most important international current affairs series, and it came intellectually from Manchester. That was the thing. That's what made that so different. And you bump into people from World in Action all over the world. I mean, we've got an executive producer on our current projects, Dick Fontaine, who's he's kind of head of documentaries at the National Film and Television School, and he was in World in Action. You know, so many people went through that, but it was completely independent in terms of it was produced and thought about, and it created that.
It had a mindset, a mentality, didn't it? A feel about it. And this is what's missing, because we haven't got. You go to the BBC. Whether you're in Salford or in London, there's a mentality, a mindset. It's called cultural imperialism. And basically, it's this global capitalism that runs things, that's box ticking. And the BBC is about box ticking, the regionality of it, everything. It's all about box ticking. It's not about, they don't sit in offices thinking, how can we create shared value for the nations and regions? How can these young people who want to do interesting things and tell amazing stories, how can we use our funding, our resources from millions of license fees to get these guys using the talent and creativity to actually address stuff that matters, that ordinary people would be really interested in. They don't give a shit. Sorry, they don't. Let's get real about this, right? Nobody gives a shit about you or your ideas or what you know or what you could do.
Inspiration.
They're not interested. If anyone's going to help you or do anything for you or save you from the blandness of all this kind of finished media that's over, it's you. And you are in a fantastic position. All this mainstream media is falling apart. It's had it. It's over. It's finished. There's about three people work in media compared to millions who don't, and you'll never get in. They're not interested in you.
So how can these
I'll give you a business. I'll give you a business model right now. Forget everything else to do with trying to get a commission. It's not going to happen. Okay, you might try for years, and some of you might be lucky. You might have an idea. It might just land on a desk, and you might get a commission right there and then, and you get £500,000 to make a series. Fantastic. Highly unlikely, but it might happen, but highly unlikely. Right, here's the business model. Do this. Do this. Okay, this will save you. It'll save me. It'll save all of us in the end. Find 1,000 people, wherever they are in the world, who really, really care about what you do, who love your stuff, that they will give you £10 a month to pay for your creativity. I could give you a list of hundreds of people doing that right now, who are building a community of people who care about their message, their idea, their stories, and that they pay a subscription.
How do you do it, Ian?
Well, you have to do... Right, here's how you do it. It's really hard. You probably won't be able to do it.
Try and get a commission.
Seriously. Seriously. Some of you will be able to do it. Here's the deal. It's very simple. You have to have something compelling that people want to see or read or listen to or buy or care about. And they will follow. If you can't get 50 people to turn up in Lancaster, in a pub, to listen to you play guitar or sing or whatever it is you do, or come and watch your film, you've no chance. If you can get people to actually be interested in what you do, you can monetize that, you can turn it into a business, and you can make a living, and you do not need permission from any of the gatekeepers. It's totally a different mindset and a totally different business model. And you can team up with people who care about what you care about to make a difference in the world. And it's really hard, but you can do this. It's totally different than the old model, but you can do it. And I think it's the only way forward.
Yeah, I can cover that. I think it's interesting because when you were talking there, I thought, it's interesting. It's like when the punk revolution started, because it was the first time, like the Buzzcocks were talking there, weren't they? Let's do it ourselves. Fuck the record companies, fuck everybody, we're going to do it ourselves. Yeah. And I think that's been the message of today, really, is that, you know, don't listen to us. We're old farts and we've gone, right? It's about you taking hold of it, and making the programs that you're interested in. Not the same old rubbish that we're trying to do all the time. I got an interesting story. I had an Asian lad come to me when I was from Rochdale who brought me this Asian script, and I thought it was the Asian Phoenix Nights. I thought, this is bloody brilliant. And I was working at Baby Cow at the time, so that was Steve Coogan's company, Good and All the company. So I took my script, it was called Brothers in Trouble, about two Asian brothers in Rochdale, gave it to Baby Cow. Baby Cow grabbed it out of my hand like it was the Holy Grail, rushed to the BBC for it. Right, look at this. We've got the Asian Phoenix Nights here. And then what happened is they started to tinker with the idea, and I was bounced off the project, and Henry Normal put an American scriptwriter on it who'd never even been to Rochdale. So I'm thinking, this is a bit odd. But anyway, by the time the BBC and this woman got hold of him, he had to do 14 rewrites. So 14 rewrites meant the whole thing was just watered down to nothing. Yeah. It could have been any sitcom in any land, in anywhere else. And that's why I'm sort of angry about the comedy and the drama, because they say all these things, we want the new voices, we want the new ideas, but you cannot get through the gate with them. Makes it impossible, even when you've got something as good as an Asian sitcom.
But ironically, the money is still in television.
Yeah, it's still
yeah.
And also, you don't have to go online. You don't have to sort of start something yourself and put your own money into it. We're talking with a few friends at the moment of doing a documentary in our spare time, which we're calling Project X.
What's spare time?
I know, well, that is the difficulty. But it's people that I work with, and you know, something we're passionate about doing on the side. And I've looked out there for grants, and there's hundreds of grants out there that you could access right now. If you go online and just type into Google TV grants, you'll find many organisations do them. A lot, interestingly, of big commercial organisations do them. Ford do one, for example. And what Ford want from it is something that's going to educate people. They don't want to do health because they think there's enough health documentaries out there. They don't want to do sport. They don't want to do anything to do with their business or anything to do with that sort of thing. They want to promote things that are to do with social changes.
They actually want to use you and your talents to make them look better in the world so that they can carry on doing the things that they do.
They're going to give you some money, and it's up to you to do what you do with it. So there's different companies, there's different organisations doing it. There's some nice organisations doing it.
You can
as well,
find people that you believe in and get
But
support from
you
them.
can.
Absolutely.
You can get support to do that, especially when you're a student. You've got nothing to lose. You know, I've got a mortgage, I've got a dog. He needs feeding. I've got 3 cats, I've got a husband, I've got a baby on the way. I've got lots of things to lose. I've got responsibilities. I always think, and I always felt when I was in my early 20s, you've got absolutely nothing to lose. You've probably got debt,